He said it sounded like an unruly mob out there and maybe they should be arrested or whatever. We should call the cops on them. And Cecile decides to tell everybody to pin their IDs in their bras because we might have to get arrested today. On the outside, I'm like, okay, so how's this going to work out? Internally, I'm like, lady, what is happening here?
Sally Christensen, the founder and CEO of Argent, a women's workwear brand. And this is Work Friends, a podcast for those who take their work, but not always themselves, seriously.
Work Friends.
Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Alencia Johnson, an award-winning cultural commentator, political advisor, and leader who sits at the intersection of social impact and culture change. She's the founder of 1063 West Broad, a consultancy and media company, and has a truly remarkable resume. Previously, Alencia worked as director of public engagement at Planned Parenthood and held roles on the presidential campaigns for Barack Obama, Elizabeth Warren, Joe Biden, and most recently Kamala Harris, where she served as senior advisor. Today, she's joining us less than a month away from the release of her debut book, Flip the Tables, The Everyday Disruptor's Guide to Finding Courage and Making Change. In it, Alencia takes us along her journey of ambition, purpose, mental health, and learning how to be a change maker even when the world at large makes it seem impossible. It's a personal story and a workbook designed to help us look inward and tap into our own powers to be disruptors. Now on Work Friends, Alencia Johnson. Hi, Alencia. Welcome to Work Friends.
Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited to be here. We first connected in 2020 at the height of COVID and immediately partnered on what probably is my favorite campaign we've ever done, our supermajority partnership.
It was so fun. And also, well, first, thank you to Cecile Richards for bringing us together.
I love her.
Oh my God. She was just an icon. Mm-hmm. And you know, the funny thing is, I don't know if I ever told you this, but when I had just gotten off the Warren campaign, I was just trying to figure out what to do. And I was talking to Cecile about just life and updates or whatever. 2 weeks later, I get a call from Supermajority, my friends over there, and they were like, Cecile said that you could do like some of our brand and entertainment work. And I was like, oh, yeah. And they're like, we didn't know you did that, but we have this partnership that we want you to work on. And that was Voting Suits You.
What?
That literally was it.
I can't say enough great things about that woman. And I actually did not formally really know Cecile until that campaign. And she was one of our models that we featured for that. And then we became close as a result of the success of that campaign and just our activism, I think. But what a wonderful human being.
I mean, she's model-esque, but this amazing organizer and activist, and I write about her in the book, and I'm so grateful that I got to know her and work for her, and honestly, for her to become a friend and like mentor.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was one of those.
One of one.
And now we continue in her memory. Okay, so we're just going to jump in with an icebreaker, which we really don't need because we've already, started. But first of all, congratulations on Flip the Tables. The book, it's coming out in about a month, March 11th. How are you feeling?
Anxious, excited, nervous. This is the hardest thing I've ever done. And you know me, I do some hard things. Yeah. But this is like the hardest thing I've ever done. But I'm so excited for it to get out in the world because I've gotten some like early reviews from people who have read it that like they've told me that like it's changed their lives both personally and professionally. So I'm really excited.
You're a founder too, but I think this is very personal, like writing a book and then putting yourself out there, in such a public way. I think that's the piece that it's just very vulnerable, but necessary,
I mean, well, we're both Virgos, right? Our birthdays are a couple of days apart. One day apart. Right? And the crazy thing for me, I can go on international stages, on television and up in rooms and advocate for people and talk about like what communities need and, stand in the gap. But when it comes to like talking about myself, and there's a whole lot of myself in this book because I'm not a psychiatrist, so I have to talk about my own experience. It was scary and it was really hard, but it's been really worth it. And when I was recording the audiobook a few weeks ago, I was crying through some of the things that I'm writing about. And I finished it and I was like, wow, I am so inspired. Yeah. I can't believe I wrote all of that. But, it's important for me to be more vulnerable, especially in this season of life that, I'm really trying to live life by my own terms.
Yeah.
And which is interesting because, folks know my accomplishments, all of that. And there were still a lot of times that I felt like I was holding myself back. I didn't have a lot of courage. I wasn't going after the things that I wanted, both personally and professionally. And like, what was I going to do about that? And like, this book really takes me through that journey of disrupting myself, then my vision, then the community. And it's very vulnerable and open, and I hope it gives people the permission, especially women, the permission structure to do that in their own lives.
I think there is a lot of power in just sharing our stories as much as possible. It's one of the reasons I wanted to build Argent, but I feel like society tries to keep us in a box and define what our experiences should look like. And we've been taught that talking about things like politics or money or ambition, like the list is so long, it's taboo. And I think in the last few years, it's been really refreshing and encouraging because women have stepped into their power more. And in sharing our stories, we recognize the similarities that, in our lived experiences, and also, I think, derive confidence from learning about one another's experiences. So I just think that, like, it is very brave to share your story, but it's also such a gift.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so I'm excited for the launch. I'm excited for everyone to read this and experience it. We're going to get into that. But before we do, I want to hear about your biggest oh no moment this week, and it's early in the week, so maybe from this past week.
Oh my goodness.
What's gone sideways, and how did you handle it?
What has gone sideways?
For Virgo, not
and
much,
how
but
did I handle it? I mean, I freak out internally, right? Like, but you can never read us. Like, my friends are always like, I cannot read you. I don't want to talk about my nail break. What went wrong?
Could be a nail break.
I mean, I will say, like, this probably sounds so frivolous, but again, Virgo, very busy, and I love fashion. I love to be put together. And so I keep my nails in a way that, like, they can last me like a month. Also, it's really expensive to get your nails done. And my nail is broken in half, and it is hanging on by a little bit of a glue and a Band-Aid because I am traveling nonstop this week, and it's throwing me off because I can't. Like, the appointment that I set for a week from now is like so far away. And as a Virgo in 4 houses, I don't know if I told you that. Yes, I know.
No.
I feel sorry for myself.
Yeah, you have to just go to a place if that's your existence.
Yeah. Like and I'm not super into astrology, but my friends who are like, oh girl, are you okay? I'm not okay. And so like... to have all these little things that like are supposed to be perfectly in line in this middle of chaos that I'm dealing with, and rolling the book out has been my frustrating moment.
Yes, it's a good one. It is. It like speaks to me because I am also a Virgo. That's like, it's these things that we've planned and taken care of and like checked off, and then when something goes wrong, like just breaking a nail, I know it seems simple, but it's not.
Well, and
it just gets in your head.
It gets in your head, and like it also, for all the big things that we're doing in the world, I'm sure people are gonna be like, girl, the world is burning. It is. But in order for me to manage these big things, there are like little things in my life that I just rely on being taken care of. And like, this was a symbol of like, let it go. Whatever happens, if you're on the podcast or CNN tonight with a broken nail, it's actually okay. And so it's been this little thorn in my side right now, but I'm managing through it.
It's about control though too. Yeah. And like my dad, when I was really young, said something to the effect of, and I very much subscribe to this, but it's like, you have to be happy with yourself, love yourself, confident, take care of yourself before you can give back to the world, before you can like show up as your best self. So I think it's partially that, and existing in this current political climate and just with the world literally on fire, and all these natural disasters, et cetera, we have to find like our happiness wherever we can.
Totally.
And go small sometimes and make sure that we are okay so we can then show up, I think.
And like, if I can control at least the little small things, like the big things that I can't control seem more manageable.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So I want to ask about your upbringing. Also, this is really fun for me because I have known you for a long time, and some of this I'm going to know and some of this I don't.
Yeah.
So I know that you grew up in Virginia, but what was it like growing up there, and what early examples of work do you remember witnessing that inspired you?
So I grew up in Fredericksburg, Virginia, which is an hour outside of DC, and it is kind of suburban. There's some areas that are still kind of rural. And my dad's a pastor, and my faith has been it is such a big part of me. My mom was, we were middle class, but my mom at one point was working 3 jobs. And so the hard work ethic was something that I was raised with. And I went to public schools, and I love public schools. I think we need to actually invest in our education system instead of trying to dismantle it, as some people are trying to do. But at the same time, I was getting a lot of education at home and in the church around particularly Black history. And my grandmother was really involved with the NAACP, and she volunteered on gubernatorial races, presidential campaigns. Like, she was so involved. And just to grow up in a family, particularly a Black family, that understands our role in advancing society, particularly for us and our community, and then that helps everyone else too. You understand that, like, where much is given, much is required. And I've constantly grew up understanding that, okay, my gifts are for other people. Like, this purpose is for other people. Now, I will be honest, and I wrote about it in the book a little bit. Like, when you're younger, you don't understand, like, the balance, right? The balance of, yeah, but sometimes I want to do what I want to do, and, like, I don't need to fit into this mold, right? Because I was the pastor's daughter, so all eyes were on me. I was captain of the cheerleading team, all eyes were on me. I was in pageants. Like, there were all these places that I was in that I had to kind of be perfect and fit a mold. And as I got older, I had to break out of that. But I am appreciative of that foundation. The other thing about where I grew up, it wasn't as diverse as it is now. And I was the only Black kid in a lot of spaces, not necessarily at church and at home, but in some spaces at school. And what really crystallized how I grew up was when Donald Trump came down the escalators in 2015 announcing his candidacy. And I'm here in New York working at Planned Parenthood, and my colleagues are like, oh my gosh, he's never gonna win. He's so outrageous, what he's saying. I think about, like, immigrants and all of this. And I was like, hey guys, I actually went to school with people who love that. I went to school with people who would literally wear a Confederate flag t-shirt the first day of Black History Month every year.
And had tattoos. I grew up with those people.
And and had tattoos, but then at the same time,
like Confederate flag tattoos, sorry to clarify.
And then at the same time though, we're listening to a lot of hip hop and rap. They were like over-sexualizing the Black women and, like, the Black girls in our bodies. And so it was this weird dichotomy, but I saw what that kind of racism was, and I obviously knew it was wrong, but it's baked into the fabric of the United States. So having that upbringing, plus I was only child. I'm an only child, but my mom I have tons of god brothers and god sisters because my mother just, like, brings everyone in and is just so full of love. It really taught me a lot about working hard and letting your work speak for you, but also understanding that the world isn't fair, particularly to Black women, and that it's, like, joy has to be part of this too. Right. And because sometimes I put too much pressure on myself when I was younger. But as I've gotten older, I've realized that that's actually part of this work. And yeah, it really anchors me in who I am. And that I also, the other piece of it too, is, like, I don't have to shy away from my faith to get into the rooms that I'm in and to be in the spaces that I'm at.
You talked about hard work and letting the work speak for itself. I want to hear you speak to how you make sure, though, that work is seen, because I think women do put their head down a lot of times and they're told that hard work's going to be acknowledged. Yeah. But it has to come with some form of, like, I'm not getting paid enough, or,
totally.
I'm not being noticed or whatever. So, like, I just want to hear you talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, I had that a lot of times in high school, college, where I did feel like I wasn't being noticed. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I am outworking everybody here.
Exactly.
And it's funny, I posted, there's this part in the book where I, like, dissect being a trailblazer through the lens of Beyonce and Cowboy Carter. And so obviously the day after the Grammys, I posted something about it. And an old friend from college, he posted of, like, I mean, Beyonce's amazing, Alencia, but, like, you walked around with this, like, sense and presence of excellence. And I was always paying attention to you. And I'm like, you football jock, what? And, like, the compliment was really amazing. And to this point that you're making, there were times in high school and college where I was like, I'm doing the work, but these other people are getting a lot more credit. Yeah. And so what do I do about that? Well, I actually have to find the courage and speak up about it, right? And go to the decision makers. And because my mom and my dad told me that my voice mattered, My mother would always say that she would come home and I'm like at the table talking to my dad, and she's like, she's still talking? And he's like, honey, she has something to say. And because I had that in me, I would constantly fight for what I believed I deserved and talk about how, the white girl over here who didn't put in as much work for some reason got picked first, or how did she get an A+ and I didn't get the A+ here? Or because, I had done the extra credit, or I was also in 5 different clubs and organizations, and I was doing all these things but wasn't recognized. I had like a lot of tough conversations with a lot of my teachers in high school, my professors and the deans in college, to the point they gave me this nickname, Miss CNU, because they were like, you were always in the president's office about what, you thought you deserved. And so I think there's a balance, because I do know a lot of people who brag about the work that they've done and haven't done really anything. And my mother has always been like, your work, yes, has to speak. That means you have to do the work and also advocate for yourself at the same time and be okay with that. At one point and during my career, especially when I started to do more media, more public speaking, and a role that I had, there were people who didn't even see that as work. They said that me doing that was putting myself above the mission. And I'm like, well, but I'm out here talking about the mission. That is actually an extension of the work. And I think it's those types of scenarios that put women and people of color in a space of, oh, well, me talking about this, me actually ending up getting some notoriety around this isn't actually a good thing. And I think that's the system that we're in, pushing us into the shadows versus us actually being these bold, disruptive experts that we are.
I'm so happy to hear you speak on this, because I think that you've done all of the right things. I think that we do fall into this trap of just doing the work and waiting and waiting and waiting. It will be penalized sometimes if you speak up and advocate for yourself, but it's so necessary, because it is not fair. And I just think it takes a high level of confidence, yes, but it's really important that we have these tough conversations, because the other thing that happens is I think that teachers and bosses and managers who have some level of influence in these environments will change their behavior, because oftentimes they're doing it without recognizing they're doing it.
Totally. And then also, too, what I've learned is that, and this is what gives me the courage, right? I think courage isn't the absence of fear. It's understanding that there's something greater than your fear that's worth it, which is why I actually love the word courage more than brave. There's a time and place for both. But it reminds you, too, that if I'm advocating for myself, I'm actually opening the door for everybody else too. Because I'm probably not the only person that's dealing with this. Yeah. And that helps me too, of like, well, if I don't speak up, I don't know who else is going to speak up. And the 5 of us actually need to make sure we're all paid.
Yes.
What we're owed.
It's so hard for me not to jump into the topic of your book, because I'm like, that's what it's 100% that like being disruptive in all the right ways and in paying it forward. Before we get there, I want to back up to talk about, so you studied comms and leadership at Christopher Newport University. Yeah. And then moved to DC, worked at Geico, is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then how were you thinking about career at that point? Because you pretty immediately got involved in President Obama's reelection campaign. So I'd just love to hear about what you were envisioning.
Yeah, so I went to college and my pageant answer when I was doing pageants was that I wanted to be a news anchor talking about politics and culture, because I grew up watching BET News and I loved Oprah and Teen Summit, all those things. But I had a feeling that if more people who looked like me, whether young, women, Black, intersection of all those, whatever it may be, saw themselves, they would actually participate more in our politics, right? Because I also understood how important your role is in politics. And so that's what I thought I was going to do in college. I actually spent a lot more time in my extracurriculars. I was president of so many different clubs and organizations. I had news internships, and I was just doing so many things on campus. And it was my last news internship where I realized, Alencia, you are not an unbiased person. You have very strong beliefs in the world. And even if you try to keep a poker face, you cannot. So why don't you go become an actual expert and then give your analysis, right? Like, you don't have to give up this media dream, but like, go get your expertise. And so I said, okay, great. I'm going to scrap my resume tape after like 3 amazing news internships and then go work in politics and then become an expert on television, right? Well, it doesn't just happen immediately. And I was like, I'm going to get a job on Capitol Hill. I'm going to get a job in the Obama administration. So I graduated in 2009. And at the beginning of his first administration. And so I'm applying for all these, even internships. And people are like, well, do you have campaign experience? Do you have a government affairs or whatever it may be major? And I'm like, no. And so I couldn't get a job. And on the other side, my mom and my dad worked at one of Geico's regional offices. And my mom's like, you need to come get a job. Like, I know what you want to do, but like, it's time for you to get a job. Mm-hmm. And then you'll figure it out from there. And so I got this temp job at Geico, but they opened up at their corporate headquarters in DC, they opened up a corporate communications job. And I said, well, okay, it's in DC, it's communications, I can network with people. Let me just go figure it out. And I worked there for 2.5 years, and that corporate experience has been really helpful, especially in my consulting. I even met a lot of people that I worked with there, like civil rights leaders like Mark Muriel during my time there that I still work with in all of my various roles. But I was networking. I would spend like almost 2 hours a day applying for jobs or trying to meet new people. And that eventually turned into getting a chance of a lifetime on President Obama's reelection campaign. And she hates when I say this, but my boss at the time, she doesn't remember saying this. I was like, no, you said it to my parents. But she said, Alencia wasn't the most qualified for the position, but she was the most recommended. And I was like, that's actually a compliment.
Very much so.
I knew I didn't have the skills to be a surrogate media booker. I didn't even know what that meant, right?
Yeah.
But I was like, that's a great compliment. And like, that's also a testament to the fact that I will rise to the occasion. Absolutely. And that literally, had I not worked there, I would have never worked at Planned Parenthood. We wouldn't be sitting here, right? Yeah. And it was the catalyst that I needed. And literally, they called me, they emailed me. I remember the subject was fired up, ready to go. They wanted me to move to Chicago in a week from DC. And I was like, wait, can I get 2 weeks? And my friends who like worked in the administration and on the campaign already were like, Alencia, you don't ask the Obama campaign if you could have more time. But that was the parlay into politics. And I was 24 years old. I like literally wrote on either Twitter or Facebook, Chicago Dreaming, like in 2010 as a kind of, I want to go work on the Obama campaign, but I just said Chicago Dreaming. And I knew in my heart I wanted to spend my birthday at the DNC in 2012, which was my 25th birthday. And it happened. Mm-hmm. But like, I cannot find the tweet, but I literally wrote it on Twitter, Chicago Dreaming. And then 2 years later, I'm working on the reelection campaign of President Obama in Chicago.
There's so many nuggets in everything that you're saying. So I just want to like pull some out. One is networking, and I would argue that that's one of your superpowers, and you've really been able to build a career around it. There's like, I think 60% of career, if not more, is based on networking within organizations and corporations and outside of. I think that a lot of jobs come from who you know. It's probably the patriarchy thrives because of this, but knowing all of these things is really important for women, especially because it's that informal aspect of work that really sets you apart and puts you on the path. And you are really a case study for it, because I feel like you've built your career off of that, you know, and earned goodwill along the way. But you've also gotten outside of your comfort zone and asked people for coffee or formed these relationships. And so I think that is really like something that I hope women take from this, is just ask. Because I think people at our level, people at all levels want to be giving back and nurturing like the next generation as much as possible. So, you know, what's the harm in asking and just building your network? And then I also love your attitude and how you approach work, where there's something to be gained in every role and in everything that I do. And when you put yourself out there and communicate and have clarity on what you want to do, people remember that. So I think that that's sort of built off of the networking conversations of, I like want to work for this administration. I will do anything. I will get there. And I just feel like that is helps will it into existence, you know? So I feel like this is like very helpful for our listeners. Yeah. So you moved to Chicago, did this, And then you mentioned this, but then you joined Planned Parenthood working for the Director of Public Engagement.
Well, I started out at Planned Parenthood as a press officer.
Oh, okay.
And they were looking for, here's the funny thing. I actually did not want to work for Planned Parenthood when I first got offered the opportunity to even apply for the job.
Where did it come from?
So, my network, right?
Yeah, there you go. Okay, great.
My network. And it's funny because as you were saying that, I was like, how many jobs have you actually like applied for? And my job at Geico, yes, but like everything else kind of came to me. It might have been an open position, but like it came to me through my network. So Planned Parenthood came to me through a consultant that worked closely with me on the Obama campaign. And she's like, I know you want to do some like political communication. Planned Parenthood's looking for a press officer that's focused on Black media. And it's not that I didn't believe in the mission. I have my own reproductive health care challenges. When I was in college, that required me to medically withdraw. The issue was very personal to me, but the women's movement can be very white-centered. And like I had spent a lot of time studying Black feminists and understanding what the Black women were doing during the suffragist movement. And I'm like, I don't want to go into a space where I'm not welcomed, right? Because that was the perception. And I was getting familiar with Cecile Richards because she did a lot of work for the Obama campaign. And I thought she was amazing, but I didn't see myself there. And I will never forget having 2 conversations with mentors and big brother, big sister from the Obama campaign. And they were like, if you want to do anything else in politics, take this job because of Planned Parenthood's political power and the Democratic Party. And I was like, oh. Okay. And then my other
say no more.
Say no more. And the other piece of advice was like, no, you need to go to New York and don't come back to DC. Don't start dating this guy you were dating before. Like, do not come back. Go to New York. And I was like, okay, I think I'll take the job. And it was the best thing ever for me, Sally, especially taking the job in New York, because Planned Parenthood's offices are New York and DC. But I moved to New York at 25 and bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, trying to figure it out. And then my mission has always been in the movement. I said, okay, if I don't see myself here, I know other people who look like me don't see themselves. And so how do I use this role to expand the perception of the work? And I'll be honest, like, me and the Black women that were at Planned Parenthood at that time, we still have a group chat, and we're always like, wow, I can't believe we really did that. Like, the campaigns we did, the partners that we brought into the fold. And so eventually, after I was there for 6 years, and I wanted to expand my role from just doing day-to-day media relations, because that gets monotonous and boring to me, even though I'm a great networker. But I wanted to do more, particularly with like brands and entertainment and movement building, and that's how I eventually became the Director of Public Engagement.
Yeah, I mean, you were there for over 6 years,
6
is that
years,
right?
Yeah,
with a lot of great experiences packed in. I also think it's so fascinating to go into an organization like that where you do have critiques. And because this is the unfair burden of marginalized communities, is that you have to pick up, I think, that cause oftentimes and raise awareness of that. But like, look at all of the change now that has taken place within such a powerful organization. I think well-intentioned organization.
Totally.
That you were really able to influence, I feel like.
Yeah.
With your time there.
It was like, I mean, those 6 years were so transformative, and a couple of other Black women directors and we created the Stand With Black Women framework. When I started, it was April 2013. Alexis McGill-Johnson was the board chair then, and I did a lot of work with her as board chair and learned a lot from her as this amazing cultural architect. And now to see her as president of Planned Parenthood, right? And to just see the work that they're doing around equity, and also understanding their position, their powerful position in the broader movement, right? And what that means for smaller reproductive justice organizations that aren't as resourced, and how do they partner together? And so, I took it as an opportunity.
Was there anything that went wrong or was challenging when you were there that you'd be comfortable speaking to?
Oh, there were so many challenges.
Because that's what we love to hear about.
There were so many challenges. It really pushed me to a place of doing things even if I don't know what I'm doing. And I constantly was approached with an idea, and it was like, all right, I guess I'll figure it out. And then even some, my former colleagues will say, well, yeah, you would throw out this idea and we'd be like, we don't know how it's going to get done, but like, let's figure it out. And that there's nothing that can't be figured out. I think for the time that I was there, you had the movement for Black Lives Rising, you had all these state anti-abortion pieces of legislation, even though you had Obama, but then you had the Hillary Clinton campaign, and then you had Trump, and then you also had a lot of corporations wanting to figure out how to stand up on these issues, and trying to figure out how to speak to all of those audiences was really challenging. And I think one of the challenges for me was trying to navigate how leadership liked to be supported or like where they would go. So one story I talk about in the book is when we were in Texas on the Stand With Texas Women bus tour after the Wendy Davis filibuster. And this was a few months after I started the job. So I'm 25. I think I'm 3 months into the job. And they send me down to be the media staffer for Cecile's trip. And I was like, okay, cool. I got it. I've staffed a lot of high-level principals on the Obama campaign. Well, I knew Cecile was an organizer, but I didn't know like she was a like roll up your sleeves, don't let the dress fool you organizer. And I am trying to navigate our affiliate down there. They were great, but it's like navigating them and like our national media interests and all of this, like trying to just manage all these things, plus Cecile, who was very like ready to go all the time. And I like couldn't catch my breath. And so one of the nights we were at the state capitol and our dear friend Lauren Peterson and I talked about this.
Amazing
human.
Speechwriter, author, has worked with Cecile for a long time.
Totally. She started at Planned Parenthood a few months before I did, but we both worked on the Obama campaign. Oh my God, I love her too. Mm-hmm. And so we were making a lot of noise. The protests were making a lot of noise, and the rotunda, and one of the state electeds, anti-abortion electeds, he said it sounded like an unruly mob out there and maybe they should be arrested or whatever. We should call the cops on them. And Cecile decides to tell everybody to pin their IDs in their bras because we might have to get arrested today. And I was like, it's like, well, first of all, I am a 24-year-old Black girl down here in Texas. You are Ann Richards' daughter. I just got this job. Like, what is happening? So, my Virgo self. On the outside, I'm like, okay, so how's this going to work out internally? I'm like, lady, what is happening here? We didn't get arrested.
Incredible experience, though.
But it was like, so like, those were the challenges that I was faced with. They're not like hard challenges, but they were like challenges of like, no, what are you really made of, right? And what are you really made of when it comes to not only your job, but like this work, like the movement. Yeah. And yeah, that was a moment. I was like, wait, hold on. I did not come all the way down to Austin, Texas, where I don't know anybody to get arrested with you, Cecile Richards. That's not going to fly over well. Actually, I don't even think I told my parents about that for like months later because they would have freaked out.
Get a new job.
Yeah, like get a new job. Especially because like I didn't realize that advocating for abortion rights I was so naive about things. I didn't realize it was so dangerous. I didn't realize during that bus tour we had like security on the bus with us. And I was like, oh, right, not everybody is on the same side as me here. And especially when it came to my faith, like people are like, how do you love Jesus and advocate for abortion rights? I'm like, well, you actually haven't read the red text in the Bible because like he actually is on the side of freedom. So yeah, but the challenges of what are you made of? And yeah, my first few months I was really tested.
Spring means one thing. It's time to say yes. Yes to outings, yes to RSVPs, and yes to spontaneous opportunities. Argent Spring Summer 2025 collection is prepared to equip you for it all. The season's newest arrivals are ready for anything with a collection of suiting and separates that are as versatile as you are. Explore captivating colors like orchid and lapis and chic new neutrals in smoke and fern. Plus shop incredibly lightweight linen styles that keep you looking and feeling effortlessly cool no matter what the season has in store. Explore all the latest spring arrivals at argentwork.com or come visit us in stores in New York City and in Washington, D.C. Happy shopping. Okay, so wrapped with Planned Parenthood and did something very courageous. You decided that it was the right time to start your own company, 1063 West Broad. What made you take that step? Naivete? Because that was what it was for me.
Well, there was a step between when I worked for Senator Warren.
Oh, yeah, of
that
course.
was my,
Duh.
it was my leap from Planned Parenthood, because Planned Parenthood was going through a transition. And I also, at that time, 2018, 2019, was like, maybe I don't want to stay like in politics and advocacy directly. Maybe I really want to lean into this culture stuff. And, you know, I have this lens, like, let me lean into culture and bring that forward. But then Elizabeth Warren, she was just out here like really talking about race and racial justice in a way that I hadn't seen a lot of white women do. And I was like, you know what? That lady has a plan for everything. And I actually ghosted the campaign when they first had reached out to me and had a whole interview with them and everything. And then I was like, oh, I don't think I want this. Like, I just didn't follow up. And it was like November 2018. I know.
Very unlike us.
Very unlike us. But after, actually, Vice President Harris, when she announced her candidacy for president on MLK Day 2019, I got really inspired. I said, oh, I got to be part of this cycle. Because like, you think like that primary was so diverse, it was so inspiring. And I was like, I have to be a part of this. And so I went and got my job back on the Warren campaign and was their director of public engagement. Part of taking that job was not anything against other people in the race that I absolutely loved. One, they had a position for me that would have been a pretty senior position for a Black woman on a campaign. And two, this lady knows how to communicate complicated policy in a way that like no one else can, and talk about learning skills. Like, I wanted to learn to do that. And I went and was her director of public engagement, where we rolled out every plan with speeches, events, endorsements, media, like 360 campaigns to roll out her policy proposals, and was really proud of that work. And so after that, when I was fun employed after her campaign ended, I had already started my LLC. Like, a friend of mine when I was at Planned Parenthood was just like, girl, just file for your LLC. You never know when somebody needs to like give you a little work. Yeah. Just have it. And I became an accidental entrepreneur. Again, like getting the call from Supermajority was like my first client. I said, oh, well, I guess I could do this. And then the George Floyd murder happened and the subsequent uprising around it. And I started getting a lot of calls from like different fashion companies, some entertainment companies that were like, we're trying to navigate this moment. We know you from X, Y, and Z, talking about our network. Can you come help us figure this out? And then the Biden campaign kept calling too. And so I was just in this place of like, oh, I guess I could do this like full time. And I never wanted to become a DC consultant, and then I became a DC consultant.
Yeah, it's great.
It's great. And I title it, the name is 1063 West Broad, because that is the address that my grandmother lived on, God rest her soul. And she really taught me that like you can be so rooted and committed to your community and also be like the flyest person in town, because my grandmother was a fly woman. And she's like, those two things aren't mutually exclusive. And like for me, that married culture and creativity with having an impact and purpose and giving back. And so 1063 West Broad is to honor her, and it just kind of stuck. But I will say I had felt like this pressure of, you know, announcing like a big agency, right? Because that's, you know, the system that we live in. People want you to announce something big, like you have all this funding, you have all these big clients. And then I realized, Sally, like I don't like managing people.
I don't. It's my least favorite part of.
I don't like managing people, and there's just so much that goes into a business that I said, okay, I'm able to be successful in this business without having to build a big agency. And I also wanted to have space and time to like lean into my creativity and all of the other things that I like to do. And so, yeah, 1063 West Broad I got pushed to it. And then by the time it was like up and running and I finally said yes to the Biden campaign, it was like August 2020. And friends of mine over there were like, girl, we've been calling you since April. And I was like, you're right, I'm coming.
We like to be part of the winning team.
It's time, I'm coming. But yeah, it's been really, I've been in business for 5 years now.
It happens quickly. Yeah, it's
So
nice
quickly.
to fall into it, though. Sometimes those are the best businesses, you know, because there's a demand for it and a need for it.
Yeah.
And you're just trying to keep up with the inbounds. Great place to be.
Totally.
Inherent with starting a company is failure.
Yes.
And I'd love to hear you talk about any big failures or roadblocks that you needed to navigate as part of starting 1063 West Broad.
Yeah, I mean, the business aspect of it, right? Like finding the accountant and like all of the legal stuff and like the insurance, just like all of these things. And I just felt like, oh my God, I can't get ahead. I can't find the right person. I've had to get rid of accountants. I've had to switch lawyers. And I've had to, I mean, I'll just say this, and like you can probably identify with this. I've probably taken some like well over 6 figures worth of like risks that didn't turn out right. You know, like you invest in something, you hire someone to help out with a project or wherever it may be, and they don't deliver, and you're like, that amount of money I could have used for this, this, and this. And then also, you know, when things aren't going the way that when people are late on invoices, when things aren't going the way that you had planned for them to go, you have to decide between yourself and the people that are looking to you to be paid, right? And so there comes credit card debt, there comes like, well, let me dip in this retirement and let me, you know, make all of those decisions. It's not smooth sailing, especially as women, especially as a Black woman. I'm not getting the investments that anybody else is, even though I've had Fortune 100 companies like as clients, and you know, they see the work that I've done. So those have been interesting failures, but I'm grateful for them because it just gives you like this confidence and this toughness. You don't take no BS. Like, you know what you're worth. And I'm grateful for those lessons. I wish they weren't as expensive. But every entrepreneur I know...
They're necessary. That's the biggest thing with starting a company. It's failure is inherent with founding a company, starting a company, building a company, but you just have to make sure that nothing is fatal.
Right.
And no matter how much advice you get, you just sometimes have to make those mistakes yourself to really understand them. I think the people piece is a big one, and then the administrative hurdle. Like, it's just so burdensome.
It is.
And it's costly. So it's like you have to either do it yourself or hire someone to do it at a time where you're just trying to make every penny work for you.
Yeah.
It's hard to justify putting it into legal and accounting, but then that catches up with you. So it's
totally
really a balance.
And then you're thinking like, okay, do I actually spend money here so I have like freedom of time? Because as you know, as a founder, your mind is constantly racing. My mom, I appreciate her so much because I'll call her and I'm like, oh my gosh, I know these people are so upset. Like, it'll be like family or friends that like may not have heard from me for a little bit. She's like, I don't think they fully understand the fact that like from sun up to sundown, and even in your sleep, you were thinking about decisions, and you don't have anyone to lean on. And I have friends who do have investors, and they're like, well, I like have to answer to my investors. And so either way, like, it's not smooth sailing.
Well, and I mean, this gets into a topic that I care deeply about, but what I think that it's highlighting is the fact that women are so severely underfunded.
Yes.
Women of color receive basically $0 from venture capitalists. And so we have to make these decisions that men don't have to make because they're getting money up front to allow you to focus on whatever problem it is that you're trying to solve and to really grow your business.
Totally.
And so for a decade of building Argent now, I've had to, make all of these trade-offs.
Yeah.
And you do learn from them. You learn how to hire slowly, fire quickly. You can see the flags in folks. You don't force hiring decisions when you're desperate. You don't act from a place of desperation, but the list goes on and on and on and on. But I think it really does all boil down to money.
Yeah.
And this is probably the thing that I'm really going to focus my entire career on at some point, but educating consumers on deploying capital into causes they care about, values-aligned organizations, awarding our dollars to women as much as possible. And I'll just highlight like our relationship. We've worked with 1060 West Broad. If anyone has a project they're working on, they should work with you. It was such an incredible experience. We not only worked together in 2020, we worked together in 2022 again. Partnership we did with Time's Up that you consulted with us on. I think, when women are writing books, like we talked about, that's also a vulnerable experience. Buy the book. Like, it's just, they're really small things that we can do to help support one another in our own ways. ways. And I think it really does come down to money oftentimes. I think a lot of what makes it so much more challenging for women, which people really don't understand, is we never have money.
No, we don't. And if we get money, there's so many stipulations around it, right? And like you get to a place of like, should I even like go after that investment or that grant or whatever it may be, because of this long rap sheet of things that I have to either prove or check in with them about. And it's actually even informed my advising to some like funds and foundations that like try to like disperse resources. I'm like, actually make that unrestricted. Like, let whoever you're investing in, especially women, especially a person of color, their organization, let them determine what they should use those resources for, and not have to give you a 30-page report every 2 months.
Yes.
Because then that's taking them away from the work. And also, Billy Bob, the white dude, you're not asking him for all of that. They get millions of dollars to continue to fail. And if we fail one time, that can be catastrophic for the rest of a person's professional career.
I'd also like to rebrand that for women. Like, failure is a positive. It means that you're out there. Let's keep going. You know, there are just so many things baked into society that are designed to make women shrink, you know, and shrivel up and just disappear into a corner. That's their objective. Don't do that. Yeah. I also think we all have a role to play in the money piece, because we are consumers. Like, we're deploying the majority of consumer spending, women, I mean. And so there are just other ways that you can support if you're not a venture capitalist, if you're not starting a fund, if you're not a grant, you know, provider.
But I think that like you're bringing up a really good point, this piece about failure. Like, let's like reframe it. I talk about that a little bit too in the book, of like, you actually, and it's so cliche to talk about like you only miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Well, we have to continue to take those shots. We have to have the confidence or just even the courage to continue to try over and over, because eventually you're going to get to that win.
And we talk, like, I feel like we talk the talk as a society where it's like, women don't ask for money. No, we do ask for money. We just have a fundamentally different experience. We get more pushback from men and women. So it's the same thing.
And women, that piece. Other women.
But it's the same with failure, where it's like, it's great to fail. You should fail. And then when you fail, we just shame you. And so it's just, it's really about continuing to just sort of barrel through it all and ignore the noise, because failure is great for you. And it's exactly what we just talked about. It's what's made me such a better founder. And I had to live these experiences. But yeah, failure is just part of the journey.
It's also made me a better person holistically, right? Like, I try more. I'm more open in like my personal life. Like, there's just so many lessons that are applicable.
That's right. Yeah. You have more, I think you approach relationships with more grace, right? And like, if people are dropping the ball, you just, our experiences are so hard that you have more perspective that you bring to relationships, I think, personal and professionally. All right, now we're going to get into the book, the thing that I've been wanting to do and that we've absolutely touched on. But you wrote this book on the heels of COVID. And so it was at a time in your career where you were coming off of Senator Warren's presidential campaign and then Joe Biden's presidential campaign. Can you share a bit more about the headspace that you were in when you wrote the book? Yeah, so the concept came to me after Senator Warren's campaign in the middle of the pandemic. I love the story of Jesus flipping over tables in the temple. That's like my favorite Jesus, who had emotion and got crunk and was like, no, this is what I believe, and this is how the world should look. And I just really thought through, wait, we all have like, there are proverbial tables that are blocking us, whether in society, but also in our own way. And then I thought about too, this was 2020, even before I had an agent and a book deal, what are the things that are holding me back from doing everything that I want to do? Whether it's professionally, you know, the media stuff that I want to do, the going out on my own, the different types of jobs, to personally, why am I cycling through the same exact guy, but like different? Like, I was like, wow, I'm dating the same person, just different look, right? Why are some of my like other relationships, whether friends, families, looking a certain way? Why wasn't I committed to my dreams and the way that I wanted to be? Why didn't I have the courage that everybody literally looked to me and thought that I had? And so I was really working through myself and realized that all of that is connected. In order for me to really show up in society, to make change and be disruptive, I actually had to do that for myself and
realizing that once I disrupted myself and had that courage and got into my purpose, it's so connected to everyone else living in their purpose, and that, wait, if we're all living in our purpose, then like we could actually achieve that really big thing that we have been wanting to achieve collectively, but we all have to be rooted in our purpose first. And part of that too started to manifest itself in my work. And people would ask, what's the thread through of all of the work that you do with like the different clients that you have? And I said, I help organizations find their sphere of influence and use it right where they are. And then I stepped back and I said, oh my God, this book, I need people to find their own sphere of influence right where they are so that they can help out the world around them and things don't feel as big. But we first have to get over the hump of like actually facing ourselves, which is really, really hard to do. We're not things that have to be fixed, but we just have to have more grace and love and acceptance with ourselves. And the work of me having more grace, love, and acceptance of myself, the messy human being, the one that makes mistakes, the one that has emotions and doesn't run from them, that was really hard work, but it led to this book. And after getting the book deal and all of that, it was around, I started writing it 2023, and things were just happening in the election, and it just felt very divine that it would come out now. Whether or not, I mean, even had Vice President Harris won, I still think it would work, right? Because there's just so much like unrest. And after the pandemic, so many of us were doing so much on ourselves, like personally, like trying to live out our dreams, that, you know, living out your dreams and making the world better, they're actually not separate from each other. They actually have to work in tandem. And this book helps you realize that, with also giving big vision to what we can be when we get rid of what society, especially capitalism, wants us to be. So I have a whole chapter on like goodbye to the boss bitch.
Yeah.
And it is literally about less is more. It's about resting and having joy, getting back to like your childlike dreams, because those things are really important. And also they confront the patriarchy, right? They confront racism in ways of, oh, wait, I'm not confining this woman, this Black person, this marginalized identity into these constructs that don't work for us anymore. And so the more that I had to get comfortable with all of that, the more I realized it was connected to answering the problems that are around us in the world.
Timeliness is the number one, like, most important thing that you need to have in your corner when you launch something. And totally. The timeliness of this subject couldn't be better. I think either outcome, you're right, of the election, this is pertinent, but I think it's especially true with the conversation around women right now, where we're being overwhelmed with information. And I think that we're also at risk of losing sight of like the power that we have. And we have so much power. So much. And individual success and is what's going to lead to collective success. And we have chipped away at so much. And so to me, this is like, it's really an exciting topic and a very timely topic, you know, ahead of the next 3.5 years. There is one of my favorite pieces of advice in the book is something that a fitness instructor told you. Ready is a choice, not a feeling. Why does that message resonate with you?
So it was Jess Sims.
Oh, Jess Sims,
Peloton my
girl.
favorite Peloton instructor. I mean, like, from her strength training classes, tread, bike, love her. And it was this one time I was on a bike boot camp, and she just yelled it, like, ready is a choice, not a feeling. And I was like, you're right. It is a choice. And I'd heard it before, but something about being in the middle of a hard workout and psyching myself up made me made it actually resonate with me in a way that it hadn't before. But I thought about the many times that, again, in my personal life and professional life, I had said, oh, well, I'm going to wait until I'm ready. But if you constantly wait until you're ready, you're never going to be ready. And the courageous decision is to say, you know what, I'm going to do this today. Yeah. And whether or not I'm quote unquote ready for it, it will eventually catch up to me. Because if I just take this first step, it will all eventually work out. The more that you put the decision to be ready ahead of the feeling, I think we're more confident in making those courageous acts.
It's not a zero-sum game, and I do think that there is a level of selfishness that we have to take when we're approaching the working world, because I think men do. And so, and I think that can work in tandem with like whatever a business is trying to accomplish, that it can also work for your personal agenda. So like, I do think that fighting for yourself is a necessary lesson for women to learn, and the earlier the better, to be disruptive.
Absolutely.
The book is called The Everyday Disruptor's Guide. How do you define what a disruptor is? Because it's a term we hear pretty often. So do you think that most people are using it correctly?
So we had a lot of conversation about using that in the subtitle. And for me, disruptor was never anything to run away from. I grew up in the Black church, and like, what's more disruptive to American society than Black people in general, right? And part of the reproductive freedom movement, the women's movement, disruptive people. And so the word disruption was always around, but then it was also around the time of like all these startups in Silicon Valley are coming up, and they're calling these people disruptors. And so at some point it became oversaturated, but the word kept coming to me, and I had to think about, what does disruption really mean, right? It is a jarring situation or circumstance that happens, right? But is disruption about just destroying something without an intention to build something new? That's just destructing something. That's like a little Tasmanian devil just barreling down and having no purpose. I think disruptors destroy something that is no longer working with the intention to build and create something new and better. Because there's that saying, and I talk about Shirley Chisholm in the book too, if there's not a seat for you at the table, bring up a folding chair. At some point, that table just actually doesn't work. And we've got to tear it down and build something new. And so I want us to actually look at disruption as not this lofty goal that only, a President Obama could be a disruptor, which he is in our society. But all of us can identify something that is no longer working. And if we have a solution, then have the courage to break down the barrier and rebuild something new. And I'm actually tired of us trying to force ourselves into spaces and ideologies that don't have the room for expansion, instead of actually starting something new. And so for me, that's what disrupting really means. And you can disrupt in your own, like there were some habits that I have that I'm still working through, in my own life that weren't working for me. Okay, this is all I can control right now. So I'm going to change this. There are some things not working in society. Let's stop trying to get a little corner seat at the table or like peek in the window so we can hear the conversation. No, let's build our own tables by destroying this one first.
I'd love to close out with some advice. As someone who's built their career bringing together culture and social impact, what would you tell someone today looking to follow in your footsteps?
Oh, that's such a lofty question. It's some advice I give to a lot of young people, and that you're never going to have the dream role there. I think I'm living in like my dream career, but there are other things I would like to be doing, some things I would like to be doing less of. But if you are committed to justice, if you're committed to a cause, keeping that as your North Star and understanding that everything that you do can actually have an impact there. And it may not be your dream job today, it may not be your dream job tomorrow, but if you can take something out of that actually pushes the ball forward just a little bit, it's going to eventually catch up. Because we also have to realize that the work of doing good, the work that we're fighting for, fully liberate society, it's going to take generations, and there's always going to be something. And the other piece that I will say is sometimes we look at culture and storytelling is more frivolous, but that is the way for us to expand our capacity for empathy and humanity, and reminding ourselves of that and how we can every day shift culture is telling our own story. I don't think we realize how powerful our stories are, especially in a world of AI, especially in a world that is trying to minimize our voices. Our stories are actually going to be the one that changes whether one person, 10 people, or hundreds of people, but it's like us continuing to tell our stories that's important.
We've come to the end of our episode, and that means we're going to play a game of Would You Rather.
Okay. Oh,
Are you
gosh.
ready? Have you seen the questions?
I did, I think, but quickly.
Oh, good. Gina says no.
No, I didn't? Okay.
Great. Even better. I always go in. These are like Gina, so I have fun playing too. Would you rather read, I think, physical book or audio book?
Oh, I love having a physical book, but I take my long, like hour-long walks. So I do like, is it crazy that I listen to the audiobook while also reading at the same time?
Yes.
Okay.
It's admirable, I think is the word, but that's impressive. I do physical book all day. Would you rather write on a tight deadline or with an open deadline?
Oh, give me a tight deadline.
Same.
I will procrastinate. Give me a tight deadline so I can clear my schedule.
Same, 100%. Would you rather go back to school to learn a new skill or teach what you know to a class of newcomers?
Teach what you know. I was a fellow at Georgetown during the election.
I know.
So I love teaching.
I'm going to take your class. I want to learn a new skill. Would you rather only answer emails with emojis or only answer calls on FaceTime?
Oh, because I love FaceTime asterisk with people I love. Emails with emojis.
I think everyone should FaceTime Alencia right now to test whether she loves you or not. Would you rather work behind the scenes or be public facing?
I like being public facing. I like talking.
I'm behind the
people.
scenes. Mm-hmm. It's been a real journey getting me to be public facing.
I know it has, Sally, but you do a great job at it.
Thank you. Yeah, begrudgingly. Would you rather dress up or dress down for work?
You know what's interesting? I am more of a dress down girl now. I mean, well, this is dressed down for me. Like, I'm in jeans.
Okay, I'm sorry. The fact that this is dressed down means you're a dress up girl. Would you rather accidentally leave your mic unmuted or your camera on?
Oh, both of those have happened.
Same.
Well, sometimes the camera can stay on and there's no sound. So, mic unmuted because I can be like, it's not me. This is AI voice.
Oh, that's a bold choice. I would absolutely rather leave camera on.
Okay.
In no world do I want my mic unmuted.
Yeah.
Which I think says a lot about me in not a great way. Would you rather give advice or receive advice?
I mean, at this point in life, I've given a book, so I can receive advice now.
Yeah, I like both. That's a hard one.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here. Alencia's debut book, Flip the Tables, The Everyday Disruptor's Guide to Finding Courage and Making Change, is available for pre-order now, and it's releasing on March 11th, just in time for Women's History Month. Where will this be available? Let's tell the people where they can find it.
They can find it wherever you buy books, so indie stores, but there's also Amazon, Target, Bookshop, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, so many places.
Audible.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
And so you can also go to my website, flipthetablesbook.com, and you'll get more information about it.
I can't say this enough, how important it is to support Alencia and authors by buying their books. So please do. Thank you for being here. I'm so happy to see you. I'm very excited for you in the book launch, and can't wait for whenever we collaborate again on something fun.
Thank you, Sally.
Thanks for listening to Work Friends, a podcast from Argent. Listen and follow on all podcast platforms and subscribe to the Argent YouTube channel for more clips and bonus content. Plus, email your work questions and dilemmas at workfriends@argentwork.com for a chance to have one of our amazing guests weigh in with advice. I'm Sally Christensen, and we'll see you next time.
Work Friends.
Work Friends is produced by Gina Marinelli with editing by Justin Krupp. Our theme music is by Karina De Piano and Melanie Naima.